Welcome to the Cheating Confession Reddit channel. Today, I'm going to share with you a real-life cheating story. It will give you a better understanding of the issue of infidelity today and help you be more cautious when it comes to a cheating wife. Let's dive into this story together.
Under the tranquil veil of the evening, an unspoken tension simmered just beneath the surface. Esteban's key slid into the lock with a practiced ease, the familiar sound reverberating softly through the quiet hall. As he stepped inside, he set his briefcase at the foot of the staircase and loosened his tie, releasing the day's weight with a weary exhale. "Luna, I'm home," he called out, his voice a mix of exhaustion and warmth. From the kitchen came Luna's cheery reply, her tone unusually buoyant. "Dinner's almost ready." The brightness in her voice felt slightly off, as if too carefully constructed. Esteban paused momentarily, considering the oddity, but brushed it aside, blaming his fatigue. He moved into the living room, where Isabella, their teenage daughter, lay sprawled on the couch, her face lit by the glow of her phone. She didn't glance up, her focus riveted to the screen. "You're late again," she muttered, her irritation cutting through the air in clipped syllables. Her thumbs danced across the screen without pause. Esteban frowned, her terse greeting pricking his patience. "Nice to see you too, Isabella," he replied, his tone laced with dry sarcasm. "How was school today?" Without lifting her eyes, Isabella gave a nonchalant shrug. "Fine." Her dismissive attitude deepened his frustration. "Could you put the phone down for a second?" he asked, striving to maintain a calm tone. "I'd like to have a conversation with you." Reluctantly, Isabella glanced up, her expression a theatrical display of boredom. "What's the point? You're hardly here," she retorted sharply. Her words struck harder than he expected, but he masked his reaction, swallowing the sting. He wanted to explain that his long hours were for their benefit, but the effort seemed pointless. Before he could respond, Luna appeared in the doorway, drying her hands on a dish towel. "Dinner's ready," she announced with an exaggerated cheerfulness, as though determined to dispel the rising tension. They moved to the dining room in silence, an unspoken heaviness settling over them. The table was meticulously arranged, and the savory aroma of roasted chicken wafted through the air. Esteban took his usual seat, with Isabella to his left and Luna across from him. They began to serve themselves, the silence punctuated only by the clinking of utensils. "How was work?" Luna asked, breaking the silence with a question that sounded more obligatory than genuine. "Busy," Esteban replied curtly. "We're pushing to meet a big deadline." Luna nodded, her focus firmly on her plate, avoiding his gaze. The soft vibration of her phone on the table briefly distracted her. She glanced at it before flipping it over, screen side down. Isabella's lips curved into a sly grin. "Looks like Mom's got a secret admirer," she quipped, her tone dripping with sarcasm. Luna's head snapped up, her expression sharp. "That's enough, Isabella," she said firmly. Esteban set down his fork, his curiosity piqued. "What does she mean?" he asked, keeping his voice calm but tinged with suspicion. "Nothing," Luna replied quickly, forcing a strained smile. "Just Isabella being her usual self." Unfazed, Isabella shrugged. "Whatever." The remainder of the meal passed under a cloud of oppressive silence. As Esteban pushed food around on his plate, unease gnawed at him. Luna's uncharacteristic cheerfulness, her guarded behavior with her phone, and Isabella's cryptic comment all weighed heavily on his mind. Yet he chose not to confront the issue, not tonight. After dinner, he offered to handle the dishes, hoping to ease the tension. Luna nodded in acknowledgement and retreated to the living room without a word. From the kitchen, Esteban could hear the faint murmur of voices and bursts of laughter. Yet something about Luna's laughter struck him as unnatural, forced. Isabella's tone carried an amused edge that seemed misplaced, adding to his growing unease. Later, as he climbed the stairs to their bedroom, he passed Isabella's partially open door and caught a glimpse of her engrossed in her phone, utterly oblivious to his presence. In the bedroom, Luna was already in bed, her back to him. The faint glow of her phone illuminated her face as she scrolled intently. "Long day?" he ventured, his voice tentative. Yeah, she murmured without looking up. Just tired. He hesitated, then leaned in to kiss her cheek. Good night. Good night, she replied softly, her attention fixed on her screen. As Esteban settled into bed, unease coiled tightly around him, refusing to loosen its grip. Something felt undeniably wrong, and he resolved to uncover the truth. The house was cloaked in stillness when Esteban woke in the middle of the night. The clock's dim display read 2:43 a.m. Reaching instinctively for Luna's side of the bed, he found it empty, the cool sheets sending a jolt of alarm through him. Sitting up, he strained to listen and caught the faint sound of a voice drifting up from downstairs. Rising cautiously, he made his way to the door, his movements deliberate to avoid making noise. Descending the stairs, he caught the soft cadence of laughter, light yet unmistakable. The glow from the living room spilled faintly into the hallway as he approached. Steeling himself, he moved closer, careful to avoid the creaky step. From his vantage point behind the slightly ajar door, he saw Luna on the couch, her laptop balanced on her knees. Her face was lit by the pale glow of the screen, her expression animated in a way he hadn't seen in years. "Oh, stop it," she said, her voice playful and flirtatious. Esteban's stomach churned. Leaning closer, he caught a glimpse of the screen. The name, Mr. Lattimore, appeared in the corner, and his heart plummeted. "Isn't that Isabella's principal?" he whispered under his breath, his thoughts a chaotic swirl. Luna's posture, her tone, and the way she brushed back her hair all felt alarmingly intimate. This was no casual conversation. His fists clenched as he watched her lean closer, her voice dropping as if sharing a secret. Though the words were indistinct, her body language spoke volumes. Every gesture, every laugh carved deeper into the growing sense of betrayal, leaving Esteban frozen in the shadows, his mind spinning with disbelief and anger. He briefly considered storming downstairs and demanding an explanation, but a visceral instinct held him back. He needed proof, not assumptions. Silently, he retreated to the bedroom, his mind a chaotic whirl. Perching on the edge of the bed, he stared blankly at the wall, his breath shallow and rapid. A suffocating blend of rage and betrayal tightened around his chest. His eyes drifted to Luna's side of the bed, the empty space feeling more cavernous than ever. The next morning, Luna behaved as though nothing had changed. She hummed softly while preparing breakfast, sliding a plate of scrambled eggs and toast toward him. "Did you sleep well?" she asked, her smile as light as the morning sunlight streaming through the window. "Fine," Esteban replied, his voice deliberately even. He studied her face, searching for the faintest trace of guilt or discomfort. Her gaze met his briefly before she turned back to the stove, her demeanor untroubled and calm. Isabella shuffled into the kitchen, her eyes glued to her phone. "I need the car. Group project," she mumbled. "Take it," Luna said without hesitation. "Just be back by dinner." Esteban watched the interaction silently, his mind replaying the events of the night before in an endless loop. Over the following days, his suspicions grew. Luna's phone seemed to buzz incessantly, and she appeared increasingly tethered to the screen. When Esteban entered a room, she'd quickly lock her phone or snap her laptop shut, movements too deliberate to dismiss. One afternoon, while Luna was out running errands, Esteban made his move. He dug out an old USB spy camera from a previous work project and discreetly set it up on the living room bookshelf, its lens aimed at the couch and coffee table where Luna often worked. He also installed a monitoring app on his phone, ready to capture any activity. That night, he stayed in his office, pretending to work late. Around midnight, he heard the faint creak of Luna descending the stairs. After waiting a few moments, he opened the monitoring app. The live feed showed Luna seated on the couch, her laptop open. A name appeared on the screen, Mr. Lattimore. Esteban's stomach churned as he watched her lean into the laptop, laughing softly. Her body language, her expressions, and the tone of her voice were unmistakably intimate. He hit record, each passing second amplifying his dread. The next morning, while Luna was out, Esteban unlocked her phone using a passcode he'd memorized long ago, her mother's birthday. What he found confirmed his worst fears. The messages were explicit. Photos and plans for clandestine meetings filled the screen. One text read, "Last night was incredible. Can't wait for the weekend." Another cut deeper. "Esteban's clueless. He's always buried in work." His hands trembled as he scrolled through more evidence. Hotel reservations, candid photos of Luna, and exchanges dripping with intimacy. He set the phone down, his breathing ragged. When Luna returned later that afternoon, she greeted him with her usual warmth. "Hey, how was your day?" she asked, leaning in for a kiss. "Fine," Esteban replied curtly, leaning away slightly. Her smile faltered. "Are you okay? You seem off." "Just tired," he said, his tone carefully neutral. "Work's been stressful." She nodded, appearing reassured, but Esteban's mind was already crafting his next steps. Confrontation would have to wait until he was ready. Over the following weeks, he methodically compiled evidence. He installed additional cameras, tracked her online activity, and saved every damning detail. Each discovery twisted the knife deeper. One evening, Isabella's sharp tone almost broke him. She sneered at him for being strict and dull. He bit his tongue, unsure if she was oblivious to the situation or complicit in some way. The thought lingered, but was quickly pushed aside. By the end of the month, Esteban had amassed an irrefutable collection of proof: videos, screenshots, and logs. The weight of it all threatened to crush him, but he refused to falter. He focused instead on what needed to be done. One night, lying in bed beside Luna, he stared at the ceiling. The woman he'd trusted with his life, the mother of his child, had destroyed everything they had built together. Amidst the anguish, a strange sense of resolve emerged. He knew the time had come. The day of reckoning arrived. The living room was immaculate, its serene atmosphere masking the storm about to erupt. Esteban sat stiffly on the couch, the evidence neatly arranged on the coffee table. When Luna and Isabella entered, their expressions shifted from mild annoyance to wary curiosity. "What's this about?" Luna asked, her voice edged with defensiveness as her eyes darted to the papers. Isabella slouched into an armchair, barely glancing up from her phone. "Sit down, both of you," Esteban said firmly. Luna hesitated but complied, perching on the couch. Isabella sighed dramatically, sinking deeper into her chair. "If this is about the car," Isabella began. "This isn't about the car," Esteban interrupted, his tone glacial. His gaze locked onto Luna, unyielding and piercing. "Why don't you tell Isabella what you've been doing?" A flicker of panic crossed Luna's face. "What are you talking about?" she asked cautiously. Without a word, Esteban reached for the stack of papers and tossed them onto the table. The documents spread out, revealing texts, photos, and emails. Luna's eyes widened as she recognized the evidence. Her face paled, and the enormity of her betrayal crashed down on her in an instant. Esteban's voice was sharp and controlled as he demanded an explanation. "Tell me what this means," he said, his words cutting through the room like ice. Luna's hands trembled as she reached for the stack of papers, her face drained of color while her eyes darted across the damning contents. "Esteban, you have to understand. It's not what you think," she stammered, her voice quivering. "Please listen to me." His frustration erupted, his voice climbing in anger. "Not what I think? These texts, the hotel bookings, the photos, it's all here in black and white. Don't insult me by pretending otherwise, Luna." Her mouth opened as if to respond, but no sound came. Nearby, Isabella, who had been scrolling through her phone, looked up, her face a mixture of irritation and confusion. "What's going on?" she asked curtly. Esteban turned to her, his fury spilling over. "Did you know about this?" he demanded. Isabella shrugged, her expression indifferent as she crossed her arms. "And if I did? So what if Mom needed something different? You're boring, Dad. Always working, always tired. Maybe if you paid her more attention." The sound of Esteban's hand slamming against the coffee table cut her off. The thud made both Luna and Isabella flinch. "Boring?" he repeated, his voice trembling with fury. "Isabella, everything I've done has been for this family. The roof over your head, the car you drive, the clothes you wear, and this," he gestured toward Luna, his voice breaking, "is my reward?" He turned his anger toward his wife. You defend her? He shouted. Luna stepped forward, her voice shaky but determined. Esteban, let's talk about this, please. Talk? He retorted bitterly. Now you want to talk? After sneaking around with Isabella's principal? The evidence is all here. You've humiliated me and broken this family's trust. Isabella stood, her posture defiant. You're blowing this way out of proportion. Mom made a mistake. It's not the end of the world. Esteban's disappointment burned in his gaze as he turned to her. A mistake? Do you even hear yourself? This wasn't some accident. It was a choice, and a selfish one at that. When Isabella tried to argue, Esteban silenced her with a raised hand. Enough! I'm done with the disrespect and ingratitude. This crosses a line. He faced Luna again, his tone even colder. And there's something else you've been hiding from me. Without another word, he left the room, his footsteps echoing in the tense silence. Luna and Isabella exchanged nervous glances, the weight of unspoken truths filling the space. When Esteban returned, he carried a manila envelope. Standing before them, he held it up as if rendering a verdict. I didn't want to believe it, he began, his voice unnervingly calm, but I had to know the truth. Luna's face went ashen. What is that? She whispered. DNA results, he replied flatly. He tore open the envelope and flung the documents onto the coffee table. Proof that Isabella isn't my biological daughter. The room fell silent. Isabella stared at the papers, her expression shifting between disbelief and confusion. What are you saying? She demanded. Esteban didn't falter. You heard me. I'm not your father. Your mother's lies run deeper than I ever imagined. Tears streamed down Luna's face. Esteban, I can explain. Don't, he snapped, his voice cutting her off. For years I loved Isabella and raised her as my own. I believed she was my daughter. And you knew the truth all along and said nothing. Isabella's defiance crumbled as she turned to her mother. Mom, is it true? Her voice wavered, filled with disbelief. Luna reached out to her, but Isabella recoiled. I can explain, Luna pleaded, her voice desperate. Explain? Esteban interjected, his voice laced with anger. The truth is there for everyone to see. You've lied to me, and worse, you've lied to her. Isabella's eyes brimmed with tears as she stepped back. You knew? All this time? How could you? Luna collapsed into sobs, burying her face in her hands. I was young. I made mistakes. I never meant for any of this to happen. Mistakes? Esteban's voice was sharp and bitter. This wasn't a mistake, it was betrayal. He inhaled deeply, his hands shaking. Pack your things, both of you. I want you out of this house by the end of the day. Luna's tear-streaked face lifted, desperation etched into her features. Esteban, please. We can work through this. Don't do this. Isabella joined in, her voice cracking. Dad, I didn't know. I swear I didn't. Please don't make me leave. His expression grew even colder. You made your choice when you defended her, he said firmly. And you, he pointed at Luna, destroyed any chance of fixing this when you chose to lie. Get out. Without another word, he turned and walked away, their pleading voices fading into the background as he retreated down the hall. For the first time in years, he felt a strange relief. The weight of deception was gone, replaced by a piercing clarity. The next morning, the house was eerily silent. In the kitchen, Esteban stared at the coffee maker. A profound sense of calm washed over him. The storm had passed, leaving the wreckage behind. As he poured a cup of tea and sat at the dining table, he felt something unfamiliar yet welcome, the faint glimmer of peace. Vengeance had transformed from a fleeting notion to a meticulously crafted plan. In the days that followed, Esteban contacted his lawyer and set the wheels of divorce in motion. Luna received the legal papers at the humble motel she now called home, a far cry from the grandeur of the house she had been ousted from. The proceedings progressed with surprising speed. The prenuptial agreement Esteban had insisted on years earlier ensured that Luna left with little more than her personal belongings. Isabella's potential claims to his assets were also nullified as part of the legal battle. Both mother and daughter were blindsided by the stark reality of their new circumstances. Luna tried to rally support from friends and acquaintances, only to discover that Esteban had preemptively exposed her affair with Mr. Lattimore. The scandal spread rapidly, and public sentiment turned against her almost overnight. Former friends ceased communication, invitations dried up, and even casual allies distanced themselves. Mr. Lattimore fared no better. Within days of an emergency school board meeting, he was dismissed from his position as principal, his career in shambles. Meanwhile, Isabella struggled to adapt to a life that bore no resemblance to the comfort she once knew. The cramped, shabby apartment Luna managed to secure was worlds away from their former luxurious home. One evening, frustration boiled over. "You've ruined everything!" Isabella yelled, flinging her phone onto the sagging couch. "We had it all, and now look at us!" Drained and weary, Luna snapped back. "You think I wanted this? I made mistakes, yes, but your father didn't have to destroy us so completely. He wanted us to suffer." Isabella shook her head bitterly. "Maybe if you hadn't lied to me my whole life, we wouldn't be in this mess." Back in the calm of his newly quiet home, Esteban was thriving. The sting of betrayal had given way to a renewed sense of purpose. He began frequenting the gym, rediscovering a fitness routine he had long neglected. Old friendships were rekindled through poker nights and backyard barbecues, bringing moments of joy and camaraderie. He also revived hobbies he had forgotten: woodworking, hiking, and photography. During one of his hikes, he met Kelsey. Seated on a rock with a weathered notebook, she was sketching the scenery around her. Her easy smile and genuine demeanor intrigued him. A simple conversation grew into something deeper, and soon Esteban found himself looking forward to their encounters on the trails. Kelsey was intelligent, kind, and refreshingly grounded, a sharp contrast to the chaos he had left behind. Their relationship blossomed naturally, free of pretense or ulterior motives. One evening over dinner, Esteban opened up. "I didn't think I'd ever trust anyone again," he admitted, his voice heavy with emotion. "But meeting you changed that." Kelsey placed her hand gently over his. "We all carry wounds, Esteban. What matters is how we heal and move forward." While Esteban embraced a new chapter of his life, Luna's world continued to crumble. Every job application was met with rejection, accompanied by whispers of her scandal. Mr. Lattimore, disgraced and unemployed, cut off contact entirely. Desperate and alone, Luna turned to Esteban as a last resort, showing up at his door one evening with tears streaming down her face. "Esteban, please," she pleaded. "I made terrible mistakes, but I'm still Isabella's mother. Can we just talk?" His expression remained unmoved. "You stopped being the mother of my child the day you betrayed me," he said coldly. Her voice cracked. "I have nowhere else to go. Isabella won't even speak to me anymore. I'm begging you." Esteban's gaze hardened. "You made your choices, Luna. Now live with them." He shut the door, leaving her muffled sobs behind as he walked away. For the first time, he felt no guilt, only a sense of finality. He was moving forward, resolute in leaving the past behind. Months later, Esteban and Kelsey stood on the patio of his newly renovated home, watching the sun dip below the horizon. She leaned into him, her presence a quiet reassurance. "You've come such a long way," she said softly. A genuine smile spread across his face. "I have, and for the first time in years, I feel free." As the sun set, Esteban felt he had found more than freedom. He had discovered a life worth living. But the past wasn't quite finished with him. Late one evening, frantic knocking echoed through his home. When he opened the door, Luna and Isabella stood there, their appearances worn and marked by hardship. Luna fell to her knees, clutching at his pant leg. Tears streaked her face as she sobbed. "Esteban, please. I was foolish and destroyed everything. Give us another chance." Behind her, Isabella stood silently, her once defiant posture replaced with a quiet humility. "Dad, I was wrong," she said, her voice trembling. "I said things I didn't mean. Life without you has been miserable. Please, let us come home." Stepping onto the porch, Esteban closed the door behind him. His voice was calm but resolute. "You want to return to the life you threw away? The life I built while you both betrayed me?" Luna's tears fell faster. "I didn't know what I was doing. I've paid the price, Esteban. Please, I've lost everything." Isabella clasped her hands tightly. "I know I was horrible to you," she admitted, But I've changed. I just want us to be a family again. Esteban studied them for a long moment before speaking. The life you're asking for is gone. And so am I. Luna clutched his arm tightly, her voice shaking with desperation. I've changed, Esteban. Truly. Please believe me, I swear things will be different this time. Isabella will change too. Isabella nodded vigorously, her words tumbling out in a rush. Yes, Dad. Whatever it takes, we'll do it. Just don't walk away from us like this. Esteban's eyes moved back and forth between them, cold and unwavering. Do you remember, Luna, the day I confronted you, when I laid the evidence of your betrayal in front of you? What was your response? Luna's head dropped, her voice little more than a whisper. I said it wasn't what it looked like. And you, Esteban said, turning to his daughter, his voice cutting. What did you say to me that day, Isabella? Isabella swallowed hard, her words faltering. I said you were boring, that Mom needed someone more exciting. Esteban crossed his arms, his expression unyielding. And now you want me to believe you've both suddenly transformed? That you respect me now, after all the lies, the dismissive remarks, the betrayal? Luna reached for his hand, her fingers trembling. People do change, Esteban. I've had to change. He pulled his hand away with deliberate coolness, his tone measured and firm. You didn't change, Luna. The circumstances did. You're not remorseful. You're desperate. Desperate because the life of ease and security I provided is gone. Isabella's face crumpled as tears streamed down her cheeks. She wiped them away with shaking hands. Dad, I don't want things to be like this anymore. I miss how it used to be. Esteban's voice grew sharper. How it used to be. You mean when I bore every burden, held everything together while you both disrespected me behind my back? When you took everything I worked for as a given? Luna raised her hands as if pleading with him. We were wrong. I know we were wrong. Doesn't everyone deserve another chance? Can't you give us one more? He took a step back, his expression hardening. Second chances aren't freely given, Luna. They're earned, and neither of you has shown me anything to suggest you've earned one. Luna's sobs grew louder, her words a broken plea. You can't abandon us, Esteban. We're your family. Shaking his head, his voice was firm. A family is built on trust, loyalty, and respect, all of which you destroyed. He turned to Isabella, his gaze piercing. And you had countless chances to show even the smallest amount of gratitude, to change your attitude, but it never mattered to you until now, when it directly affects you. Isabella stepped closer, her voice quivering. I care now, Dad. I promise I do. Esteban's tone remained resolute. It's too late. You both made your choices and now you'll have to live with the consequences. Luna made a final attempt, grabbing his arm again, her voice breaking apart. Please, Esteban, don't do this. He gently pried her hand away, his decision clear. Goodbye, Luna. Goodbye, Isabella. I hope you find a way to rebuild your lives, but it won't be with me. He closed the door firmly behind him, the sound resonating through the now quiet house. In the silence of the foyer, Esteban stood for a moment, his heart heavy yet steady. He had given them everything he had, and they had squandered it. He owed them nothing more. Walking into the living room, he found Kelsey waiting on the couch, her face calm but tinged with concern. Are you okay? She asked gently. He nodded, his voice certain. For the first time in a long time, I think I am. Kelsey smiled softly, reaching for his hand. You made the right choice, Esteban. He returned her smile, giving her hand a light squeeze. I know. I'm ready to move forward now. Outside, Luna and Isabella stood in the biting cold, their reality settling over them like a heavy weight. They had begged for forgiveness, but Esteban's stance was unwavering. There would be no return to the life they once knew. Without them, Esteban felt lighter, unshackled from the burdens he'd carried for so long. The house, once steeped in tension and conflict, now exuded peace and stillness. But the scars of betrayal remained, a quiet reminder of what he had endured and overcome. Determined to reclaim his life, Esteban embraced new routines. He took up jogging again, a habit he hadn't practiced since his youth. The rhythmic pounding of his feet on the trail became a daily ritual, a symbol of his fresh start. One morning, his path crossed with Kelsey, a woman whose quiet strength and effortless grace intrigued him. Their initial interaction was brief, just a polite exchange of smiles and a casual comment about the weather. But over time, their meetings became more frequent, and fleeting greetings turned into meaningful conversations. On a bright Saturday morning, Esteban decided to extend their chat. Running alongside her, he said, "You seem to know these trails like the back of your hand." Kelsey smiled warmly. "I've been running here for years. It's where I find peace." "Peace from what?" he asked, curiosity lacing his voice. Her smile faded slightly as she paused to answer. "Life, I suppose. Everyone has things they need to escape from now and then." Esteban nodded, feeling an unexpected connection. "Yeah, some of us more than others." As their bond deepened, Esteban opened up about his past, the betrayal, the heartbreak, and the unraveling of his marriage. Kelsey listened intently, her empathy evident in every word she spoke and every expression she wore. For the first time in years, Esteban felt seen, heard, and understood. His journey toward healing had truly begun. She looked at him with tender eyes and said, "You've been through so much." Her tone was soft yet firm, carrying a quiet strength. "The fact that you're standing here today says everything about your strength." What started as a tentative connection between them gradually transformed into a bond that neither could have predicted. Kelsey brought a sense of comfort and understanding into Esteban's life, filling gaps he hadn't even realized were there. She gently encouraged him to revisit old passions he had abandoned long ago, like crafting wood and capturing moments with his camera. They began to share small adventures, sampling new eateries, attending local gatherings, and even retreating to the mountains for weekend getaways. During one such trip, they wandered scenic trails and watched the sun dip below the horizon from a rugged outcrop. Meanwhile, occasional news of Luna and Isabella trickled back to Esteban. A former neighbor mentioned seeing Luna working at a grocery store, her once immaculate presence now visibly worn. Isabella, too, appeared to be struggling. Rumors suggested that Isabella had left college and was now living with Luna in a small, run-down apartment. The disparity between their current lives and the privilege they once flaunted was striking. On a quiet evening as Esteban and Kelsey sat on the porch, he shared the bits and pieces he'd heard. "Do you ever feel any guilt about it?" Kelsey asked gently, resting her hand lightly on his. He paused, considering her question carefully before replying. "No," he said firmly. "They made their choices. I gave them everything and they chose to squander it. Now they're dealing with the fallout." Kelsey gave a slow nod, her expression thoughtful. "You're right," she said. "But it's okay to feel conflicted too. It just means you're human." While he valued her insight, Esteban knew he couldn't afford to linger on the past. His life with Kelsey represented a new beginning, a chapter defined by love, respect, and shared strength. Together, they built a home, weaving their lives together seamlessly. Kelsey's presence became a calming force, helping him rediscover joy and rebuild trust. As months turned into years, Esteban felt himself transforming deeply. The man he once was, weighed down by betrayal and resentment, was gone. In his place stood someone who had reclaimed control of his life, determined not to let others dictate his happiness. One afternoon, while sorting through an old box in storage, Esteban came across a family photograph. It was from a time when everything seemed intact, before the lies and heartache. He stared at the image for a long while before placing it aside. The photo was part of his story, but it no longer defined him. The lives of Luna and Isabella served as stark reminders of how choices shape destinies. Luna, who had once basked in social acclaim, now lived in obscurity, her reputation irreparably tarnished. Isabella, who had once scoffed at Esteban's discipline and diligence, now fought to get by, her former confidence overshadowed by regret. For Esteban, the lesson was clear. Choices carried consequences, and trust, once broken, was nearly impossible to mend. Yet, life also offered fresh starts for those bold enough to claim them. One evening, as the sun melted into the horizon, Esteban and Kelsey sat side by side on the porch. He took her hand and spoke quietly. "I never thought I'd find happiness again." Kelsey squeezed his hand gently, her eyes steady and filled with warmth. "You've earned this, Esteban," she replied. For the first time in years, he felt the truth of those words resonate deeply. Esteban's journey, though marked by pain and betrayal, had ultimately become a testament to resilience and renewal. He emerged stronger, wiser, and deeply fulfilled. His story stood as a powerful reminder of the courage it takes to start anew and the serenity that comes from embracing a second chance. My friend, and this is the end of the story. If you liked this story, then put your royal like and subscribe to the channel. May the force be with you.